Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How are you guys doing? Everything fine on your different ends?
Oh yeah.
Is that the new
Great.
is that the new intro officially?
Did we miss the intro?
What happened here now? What the heck's going on?
You
It's chaos.
you guys see and hear me, right? It's like very chaotic.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
What a
It's
start.
chaos.
What's happening
love
right
it.
now?
Full chaos mode.
We're
How are
doing
you guys
live.
looking at the last week? What's kind of happening? I just put strategies 2 billion Bitcoin buy. It's just like such an absurd amount of buying power they still have. I just realized they raised more money last week than the entirety of the market cap of Strive. And there's like almost
Jeez.
twice.
Wow.
Strive has a market cap of like 1 billion, and they raised 2 billion. They could have bought 2 times Strive last week with the Bitcoin buy. So it's tremendous what's going on in the bear market. I think the Bitcoin cycles are very different right now, and will get to be different long term, just because of the institutional interest of the ecosystem, the whole financial engineering that we now have. So I'm just curious. I think that was kind of like my idea of the show, and then we can deviate anyways in all different kind of directions as we always do on Tuesday. So what kind of thoughts do you have, Joe?
I'm just looking at Brandon here. Brandon, he appears to be back together now. He's really glitchy now, or he was. Do you guys see Brandon okay?
Was I?
Yeah.
Me, I see him great.
Okay.
Just making sure, just looking out for him. What's up,
Nice
guys?
speed
What's
test.
up, chat? Hey, make sure we should do this right off the hop here. We should share the Mastermind YouTube channel, and everybody can hop over there right off the bat
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
instead of waiting till the end of it. Do we have that link
Yeah,
handy?
great call.
I could grab it. Robin, do you know what is the market cap of Strive?
Yeah, it's 1 billion, 1.2 or something like that. Like it's
holy crap. That's
It's
crazy.
not that big. Yeah, like it's a small company. I looked it up recently. I mean, maybe it's changed a little bit, but it's not that big of a company. If you just like Strive, ASST market cap. I hope I'm not wrong, but like I think when I saw it, it was like 1.1 or 1.2 billion.
It
Yeah.
kind of. So I was
Go
just gonna say, it kind of reminds me of like when, when somebody has a family, right? They have their first kid, and the first kid's like really everybody's excited to meet the new kid. In this case, I think it would have been Strike, and then the other two come out like Strike and Stride, and people are like, "Oh, cool, another kid." And then the baby comes along, like the baby of the family comes along, the STRC, and they get all the love from everybody. They get babysat, they get all the attention, they get this, they get that. And that's how I feel about STRC right now. And it's like, I don't know, man, if I was like allocating to like, if I was 60, 65, 70 years old and I was looking to, participate in those markets still, I wanted something a little less volatile, more stable. I might be actually looking past STRC and actually one of their other products, because I feel like even though they kind of got pushed aside a little bit, and Sailor and Fong have been, or is it Fong? Yeah, Fong. Really pushing the STRC. There's definitely something to be said about earning income, but also having the ability to convert that into the equity aspect, which is the MSTR there. So that's how it feels right now. And maybe it's just because, the numbers higher, 11.5% is a little more enticing than the 8, 9, 10%. But it's interesting. And it's also interesting to me how the hell Sailor keeps buying so much freaking Bitcoin and the price goes down. It's crazy.
You saying there's weird shenanigans going on in the markets?
Who would have ever thought? I don't know. Like it's just it's
Oh,
to me. But at the same time, it's also unfortunate because I feel like Bitcoiners are spending so much time arguing and fighting and talking about what Bitcoin should be, who should be able to own it. Meanwhile, Sailor, Fink, Putin, Trump's, they're all just buying up all the Bitcoin, and people are just kind of like, wasting all their time and energy fighting with each other. That's the state of the market to me right now.
Personally, I think it's a really good thing that we don't see massive price appreciation of Bitcoin when MSTR is buying.
True.
I think if we did, it would be evidence of a very early market of a market that can't handle a buyer like Strategy. I mean, Strategy bought $2 billion worth of Bitcoin, and it he easily couldn't have, and we wouldn't have noticed. Like, it would have been, it didn't make any meaningful difference. And I think that's a sign of how liquid the market is, how mature it is, and still got a long ways to go. But if Taylor and Strategy were actually moving the market, I think it would Bitcoin would be a lot less serious than
True.
it actually being perceived. And there was somebody in the chat talking about how some institution dumped some of their crypto ETFs. Oh yeah, XRP and Solana ETFs. These things are not serious assets, right? There was Jordy Visser was on Pomp's podcast talking about how Doge has no institutional adoption, and it is a retail indicator if there's any sort of price appreciation in it. These are not serious assets, right? Bitcoin is the only serious asset amongst the bunch, and it wouldn't be the case if it could be moved by one player, one
True.
corporation, one participant.
Yeah,
so
Sailor
true.
mentioned it recently on a podcast. I don't remember exact numbers. Was it 500 billion or 50 billion? What's traded on Bitcoin every single day? I think it was 500, but the numbers just seem so big. So I'm afraid of like saying it out loud. It might have been 50. But he basically made that argument that even if he makes the biggest possible Bitcoin buy, he cannot move the price. Like it's not, because the market is so liquid, and that's actually a good sign. People think because like, oh yeah, the Bitcoin price is not going up, so there's like market manipulation and paper Bitcoin, which like 100% there is people trying that, and they might be successful in the short run, but that's not the core reason why it's not moving. The core reason why it's not moving is because we have a very liquid market. There are a lot of buyers and sellers at any given time in Bitcoin. And that's a good thing, because if you want to put a lot of money into Bitcoin, you want to eventually be able maybe to sell some and to liquidate some and to trade in it. It would be, as Forrest mentioned, very bad for you to place big bets in Bitcoin and nobody takes them. Like if you want to dump, I don't know, you buy a home and you cannot buy it direct in Bitcoin, and you buy it and like you sell $1 million of Bitcoin on a day because you need the money to buy the home, and you cannot directly exchange it for the home. Like, and you cannot put that bet down because it's too big and Bitcoin is too illiquid. I mean, that would be horrible. I don't want to be an asset like that. Like that would be like really, really, really bad for Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think a way to understand the liquidity of Bitcoin is this: there's a 1 cent spread when you buy Bitcoin between buying and selling, right? There's going to be a spread or fees associated with the exchange, but any given large exchange is going to have a 1 penny spread on an asset that's valued at $80,000. You go into equity anywhere, it is, for one, not traded 24/7 with that spread. It is traded 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, minus holidays. If it was 24/7, these equities would have massive spreads because there just wouldn't be willing buyers and sellers at the last given price, which is what is determines a market price. So it trades 24/7, which is so much more time and so much more market participants and activity, and yet it still has this tight spread between buying and selling compared to like any other asset out there. It's really incredible, and people don't understand how important that is, because a huge part of the participants of the market are traders, and largely actually like algorithms and computers that are just constantly buying and selling at different price points based on their inputs and how they're designed.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because what was it, last August, Galaxy had, a whale sold 80,000 coins. Market didn't seem to move that much, maybe a couple percent or something like that. But it's interesting because of some of the treasury companies, I mean, mainly Sailor, I guess, really, there's been a lot of whale selling. And Sailor's largely buoyed the market for the most part. Who knows where the price would be if he wasn't buying all this. And so again, It's short term though. I mean, it's short term stuff. So people maybe aren't losing their mind as much, but maybe, who knows, maybe there needed to be a clearing out. I mean, we need a miner clearing out. We need less centralization inside Bitcoin mining. People think like that's a bad thing if the hash rate goes down. It's like, no, it needs to be decentralized more. And so these cleanouts, I think, are coming, and they're going to happen because you guys kind of alluded to it in a way as well. I mean, you're going to have people do dumb things. You have people buying bad assets, like we just talked about XRP and Solana, making dumb decisions. People thinking it's just human nature. You're always going to have people doing dumb things and thinking they can outsmart it. This time's different, and hubris, whatever it may be. And you're going to have these flush out times. And like, I still remember 2022 vividly, just because I was so excited. Like, I love seeing carnage. Like, it's just amazing. It's nature healing. And I was actually very pissed off when in 2023 we saw bailouts of the like Silvergate and a lot of things like that. Like, that's bullshit. I mean, it's just total bullshit. And the society needs to heal, and the only way to heal is to take your medicine, and to which I'm a believer. I don't. It's funny because like in the saying, I guess, you got to take your medicine, which is just the saying, but I'm not a huge proponent of medicine in real life, actually. I like to know how I'm feeling. But that goes back to this whole thing of, we have to know how we're feeling. And there's so much sedation in the market. And there's so much sedation of, well, someone's got to pay off my student loan. Someone's got to do this. Someone's got to do that. It's like, no. You just shouldn't have gone to college. Your parents lied to you. Society lied to you. Culture, media, everyone lied to you. That's a wake-up call. That's you having to rewire your brain and where you're getting your information from. Or your parents didn't know better, or your family didn't know better. People didn't know better. Things are changing. Times are changing. And we just keep kicking the can down the road by bailing people out. And I apologize for taking this down a sideways tangent, which I normally am good at and what I do. But that to me is just, it's very interesting. And just coming back to whether it's strategy or strive or whatever it is, there's going to be some of these players that blow themselves up. Some of them, some treasury companies will. I think there's going to be some big banks in the future that blow themselves up in the coming years. We see some, you look at FTX, obviously, and going back to 2022 again, and FTX, what happened there, and Sam Bankman-Fried playing with fire. And that's the beauty of Bitcoin. I think one of you just alluded to that as well. Again, you can play these games for a little bit, and it could be a year, a month, could be many years, but then eventually you get found out. And that's the beauty of Bitcoin. The trade is the settlement in Bitcoin. And we just never had that in human history before. So, know what you own, hold it. If you're owning the strategy company or strategy, if you're owning these other companies, I mean, just understand that it's not, you're not holding Bitcoin. Just know the difference. I mean, that's the big thing. Education is key here.
I want to bring in one point, because I didn't clear up that before, and maybe people are confused about that, because the naming conventions are like so horrible in that space. I'll just quickly bring it up. There is Strive, ASST, which is a whole different company. It has nothing to do with strategy. They have just like a similar strategy than strategy. I mean, one of the executive of strategy is sitting on the board of Strive. So that company is a separate entity, and they have their own perpetual preferreds with SADA. That's the daily dividend company, which is different from the Strive perpetual preferred stock of strategy. And that Strive is a perpetual, as a preferred stock of strategy, the common shares, MSDR. So I just wanted to put those two one time on screen, because I before talked about Strive, that strategy could buy this different company with Similar Scientific with 14,000 Bitcoin in 1 week, which has a market capitalization of 1.16 billion, and not about Strive, the preferred of strategy. I hope I didn't confuse anyone more at this point.
It's all starting to get a little confusing. It's cool to see it at $100 there, though. That's not supposed to be pegged there. That has upside and has some downside protection by having a dividend, but it can fluctuate all over the place.
There's also Strike, not to be confused with Jack Mahler's Exchange, which is another strategy product. And I mean, I don't know. Forrest and I had a chat on Friday with the Maple Bitcoin on the channel, and I kind of alluded to these guys as being greasy marketers trying to get people's Bitcoin. And I felt kind of bad about it after, but that's really what they are. Like, that's exactly what's happening here. And I think that
You're doubling down.
I'm doubling down on it because I don't want people to get distracted with it. I think that what's going to play out over these next couple of years as Bitcoin gets more and more ingrained in that system, and it's clearly underway. Like, even if we look back 2 years ago, the Bitcoin ETFs were just brand new in the space, and that was a big deal. But think about how much has changed since then. Obviously, Strategy being the first back in 2020 to add Bitcoin to the balance sheet, but it's not going to slow down. There's going to be some winners, some losers, but there's definitely going to be more institutional adoption. There's no doubt about that over the next 5 or 10 years. And the more it gets ingrained into that other system and interweaved into that old system, the more games are going to be able to play with it. The more manipulation is going to be possible. And so it's going to continue. It's going to ramp up. The manipulation is going to go up. The risk is going to go up. The further you get away from the asset itself, which is Bitcoin and self-custody, the more risk you're taking on. And so I just think that everybody should be their own Sailor, be their own Jeff Walton, be their own, I forget the guy name from Semler, Eric Semler. Be your own version of that. Be your own version of that for your own family. Learn how to protect your own private keys, because no matter how much bullshit's going on out there, manipulation, how much paper Bitcoin there is, that's what really matters. And when it all gets flushed out and when the tide goes out, everybody's going to be left with their pants down except for you. So the value will go up and down. The paper Bitcoin will go up. The manipulation will go up. But all you need to do is get those sats, get those into self-custody, and then just, sit back and wait. So sit back and enjoy the tide going in and out, because it's just going to keep happening. But if you got your sats in cold storage, then you're going to be completely immune from that whole thing.
I think that's really important, because there's actually been a couple of presentations from these companies. Robin, if you want to bring this up, this is the latest one from Strive. And there's even this, this crazy AI ad that Strategy made and Michael Saylor released about refining digital gold and turning it into money and making it work for me. And that's what Stretch is. And it really is this disconnection from the asset when you do that. It's a layer on top of it. And you can see here, there's these technical layers on this left-hand side. And every time you move away, like Lightning is a true layer 2. If you have a self-custodial Lightning channel, you have a unilateral exit, right? So it's trustless in that side, but Liquid is sort of near trustless, right? So there's these trustless and near trustless, but even still, you're just getting further away from Bitcoin. Apps and DeFi on top of all of this. This is just one more layer removed. You're further away from Bitcoin. You're going further out on the risk curve. In the clear example of one of the major risks of Bitcoin, which is not owning it, really, is not actually having the private keys to it, outsourcing your security and relying on someone else to be secure with that Bitcoin on your behalf, and also give it back to you when you request it.
Yeah.
Or when you execute a command, even if it's smart contract, right? This is apps and DeFi. This is all getting into smart contracts. Even Lightning is essentially a smart contract too. These are you're all relying on more and more complexity and putting yourself at risk. And essentially, these companies are going the other way, right? They're not making necessarily technical layers. They're making financial layers, which have some tech in them too. But this is digital credit. And then on top of that is this new idea of tokenization, right? This is dipping into the crypto world, but it's creating structured to lessen the volatility even more, to pay out in different increments, or to amplify it, take on more debt to buy more of it, so your return is even higher. Again, either through financial or through crypto rails. And all of that is just getting you so much further and further away from Bitcoin. The only aspect of connection really to the Bitcoin itself is that you are siphoning off some of the gains of Bitcoin in the long term and receiving those in the short term in a fiat denomination. And that is a major, massive sacrifice to make as an investor. And the only reason those things work is because it's short-term thinking. And the only real reason people get into shit coins is because of short-term thinking, and you should think about these things in the same risk vector, in my opinion, as shit coins.
Cool. Now we're talking.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's such great points. I mean, this is just that goes back to the battle of idealism versus realism, or like pragmatism versus like being a visionary. And it's tough. I mean, I struggle with this admittedly all the time. I mean, I have for years, and I think a lot of the Bitcoiners tend to be very visionary. And the INTJs, wherever we've talked about these things over time, obviously. And it's hard because you kind of, where the puck's going, you see everything, you see everything that's happened in history, and you kind of put it all together. You see the tech of the future, the money, the protocols, and it's fairly obvious once you kind of put all that work together. And I'm just broad brushing, but like, when I say like, oh, you kind of put the work together, well, yeah, that's like years of getting rug pulled. We talked about the fatal funnel, like all this gauntlet of experience and going through all this. So there's a lot that goes into it. So I have empathy for people. I know I tend to be a little more revolutionary of like, what, guys, let's just do this. Choosing money doesn't steal from you. Like, this is not hard, but not everyone's at that moment of education. They're not at that moment of humility yet and surrendering and saying, yeah, I don't know everything. I'm not a hedge fund manager on top of my 3 jobs that I'm working and my student loan debt. Everyone's got different time frames. Everyone has different time horizons. There's nuance to life. And that's really the battle and the struggle that we're with. And the only thing I can think of is that adoption needs to be slower. All the games, everything that gets played on top of Bitcoin basically is us trying to speed things up. But at the same time, this is where like 2 things can be true, 10 things can be true. Saylor is playing the capitalist game. So I don't begrudge Saylor. He's doing what he can with the tools that are given to him. I'm not in that position, so I can't do it. And I know people get mad because they're like, well, he should have to sell his yacht to buy Bitcoin. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, yes, but he's using the tools. The tools are there. I mean, theoretically, they're open to everyone. If everyone wants to go and open up an office in Langley or whatever and do what he's done for 30, 40 years and go to, sure, go do it. Like this, that's the beauty of it. I might not like it, but this is like this problem and this conundrum, this paradox that we're all in. So I'm a believer that all things are good for Bitcoin at the end of the day, or at least I should say, I shouldn't say it like that, actually. I'm probably going to stop saying that. Not all things are actually good for Bitcoin anymore, but Bitcoin being on people's tongue, I think is what's good. And so like whether it's politicians or people of influence, I think that Bitcoin on the mind is good, and people talking about it and being the lexicon. It goes back to the Chicago Blackhawks old ownership group, the Wirtz family, and like 20 years ago, they thought it was a great idea to take the television away from the fans. Like, oh, no one's going to show up to games, and we're going to take the television away. You can't do it. Well, out of sight, out of mind. It got even worse because if you're not around at all, then everyone's like, oh, they don't exist. Okay, next. And so you just have to be careful. Now, again, in saying all this, unfortunately, all this stuff that we do, whether it's going into, so like you have to hold these different positions in your head of like, Saylor's doing what he's doing with the tools he's been given. So are these other treasury companies, because we're like, well, hey, I like Bitcoin, so I'm going to use all the tools available to acquire more Bitcoin. This goes back to the Danny Knowles fight and Saylor and him had. And he's like, well, you guys told me I should be buying Bitcoin, and now I'm buying Bitcoin and no one's happy. So it's like you have empathy for all sides, but at the same time, the more games, more derivatives on top of the system just keep furthering kicking the can down the road of we're just going to keep living in this existing system at the end of the day. So it's like, okay, I mean, and so like in a perfect world, I would love to have none of this happening, and we're just getting on a Bitcoin standard, we're self-custodying. And so I don't know an answer. And that's where I have empathy for everyone. And I try to have empathy for myself and give myself grace, because I don't know the answer. And I don't know if anyone does. It's just everyone's trying to push and pull in their own way at their own time. And, none of us want self-harm, or very, not many do. I think there's a segment of society that wants self-harm in the name of like, well, good intentions. And that's like this self-harm aspect, actually, which is a whole different talk for a different day. But it does kick the can, unfortunately, down the road. All the derivatives, having to be a hedge fund manager on top of, all this is just the same system, but at the same time, again, these tools are there and all of us could be using them, and Saylor's using them. Whether, I don't know, is he asset of the government? I have no idea. Maybe he's not. Let's just say he's not. Well, he's using the tools available. Strive, Metaplanet, they're using the tools available. And
also, does it matter though? Not does it matter,
right.
But like, does it matter to you? Because if Saylor is a government asset, what the hell are you going to do about it? Well, how's that going to change your life tomorrow? Like you spending so much time thinking about it and concerning about it, how's it going to affect you? You kind of said there you don't have an answer to it. The answer is just get Bitcoin in self custody, because you can't control whether Michael Saylor is buying or not. You can't control whether he's a government asset or not. You can't control any of that stuff. But the more that this plays out, the more, you're still going to win. You're still going to be the one who has the private key to that Bitcoin. And that's the most important part to understand, I think. And, even in this, the way I think about it is like people get really excited about Bitcoin and they want to get as much as they can of it. But a lot of people don't really realize the importance of holding a private key and what it means to actually protect that private key. And so I actually do think that there's space for sailors out there. I think that there's space for banks to custody Bitcoin. I think that there's space for River Financial to hold your Bitcoin for a little while, because the day you decide to buy Bitcoin, the next day is not the day that you should take self-custody of that Bitcoin. It's just not. Forrest and I talk to people every single day who are either lost their Bitcoin or cannot restore their Bitcoin, or they're moving too quickly. And that's really how people get burned the worst, is by moving too quickly. And so I 1,000% agree with what you're saying, Brandon, in the sense of like, Saylor is doing what Saylor's doing. That's what Forrest and I said. We're like, if I had the ability to do that, I would do that tomorrow.
Yep.
Right. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means I'm using the tools that are available to me and using it to my benefit. That's capitalism. That's, in my opinion, how it should be. Right or wrong, it doesn't matter. But that's the way the world is going to work. And I can't change that. Brandon can't change that. Forrest, Robin, we can't change that. What we can change is where we hold our capital. And to me, if you have the ability, the knowledge and experience to hold your own keys, that's the only answer here. You can't worry about other shit.
I don't even know how to pronounce that, but Sandy Spa, probably completely wrong. He brought up a very good point. Is strategy buying BTC, not Saylor.
Yeah, true.
Now, strategy does own, I think, 9.9% of all the economic value of strategy. And I think he has like 40% of the voting power of strategy. So like strategy buying is to like 10% Saylor. But it's a good point. We always say Saylor is buying this 20,000 Bitcoin, but there's actually a lot of institutions, a lot of individuals, a lot of people behind the other 90% of MSTR. There's like, I think they have like 40% of, there's like 40% of retail investors that are in. There are institutional investors that also are a collective of like individuals, just as a nuance in the conversation, because we kind of mixed them in, because like strategy buys 20K Bitcoin. I think just this week they bought. Saylor does not have 20,000 Bitcoin or 25,000. I think he mentioned like having 17,000 or something like that. So like he has in that realm, but strategy buys that on a weekly basis in a good week. So I think it's just an important nuance.
Pull on that thread even more. I mean, so again, this is his sole talk. We want to get really technical with it, right? Who actually owns it? It's none of those people. The shareholders don't own it. Saylor doesn't own it. Strategy doesn't own it. Who's got custody of it? That's who owns it. And then eventually, so it's Coinbase generally, I think, owns most of the Bitcoin. I'm sure there's Fidelity or some other management in there or whatever custody. But really, we know it's the U.S. government that owns the Bitcoin at the end of the day. That one stroke of a pen, they will own all the Bitcoin. Period. End of story. And that's what I think like a lot of people are missing that. Because again, you think of a 6102 with gold, that was hard. That was actually hard to do. You had to like go turn it in. What are they gonna do with that? Here you go, Coinbase, it's ours. And Armstrong has said as much. 5 years ago, I'll give him credit. He said, "Hey, if your stuff's on our exchanges, we will give it to the government. We're a U.S. company. If the government comes knocking, we will give it up." And so he's said the quiet part out loud. Give him credit for that. But that's who owns the Bitcoin. So, or the keys to the Bitcoin. So, anyway, go ahead, Forrest.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, this is almost the truth of almost everything is whoever has the biggest gun owns everything, really. And that's just really what it is. And a lot of people have speculated that in the future, the vast majority of Bitcoin owners and users will have shared UTXOs. So that could look a lot different. You know, as I already pulled up, there's different ways to get removed from on-chain Bitcoin. Some of that could be unilaterally exit back onto a non-shared UTXO, or through some sort of technical way of doing that, or it could be through the financial markets. And the financial markets are probably the worst way to own a shared UTXO, if that's what the future is, because there is no actual claim to that Bitcoin. There is no redemption for that Bitcoin. The Bitcoin, as Brandon said, is not even owned by the company that you own the shares of. It is owned by, they've outsourced the security of it to Coinbase, and Coinbase has said, if somebody comes here with a big gun, we're giving it up. So, you know how secure that is, essentially, and to have that as a tail risk. So I think if that's what the future ends up looking like, if on-chain Bitcoin becomes really rare, it's also going to become incredibly valuable. Yep. So we have this moment in time where it's really easy. It's really easy to get on-chain Bitcoin. You go onto an exchange, you send them some paper, some fiat dollars that are just freshly printed, and you just buy some Bitcoin and you move it into a cold storage, or using a cold storage device, and you're part of this just tiny portion of the future population that will have on-chain Bitcoin, and it will be incredibly beneficial to have that, because now the largest gun in the world won't be able to threaten and take your Bitcoin. They won't even, it's possible that they won't even know you have it.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Now we're talking, boys. No, this is really important, I think, for people to understand, because even, right before the show today, I had a meeting with a guy, and he was asking me about literally this. He said, this is something that's on my mind a lot as a conspiracy-minded person. I think about this a lot in terms of like what happened in the 1930s, the 6102 executive order, where the government said, I don't know the exact details of it. From my understanding, the government basically said you can have 5 gold coins maximum, which was about the equivalent of about $100 US at the time. And I don't think that they went door to door. I think they just expected their citizens to essentially turn them in.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Self-select. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's self-selection, right? It's just like we try to scare you, and then like we'll get a good chunk of it, and like that's cool. That's all we need.
Right.
Good to good. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I mentioned to this guy. I said, think about that exact same scenario where instead of it being kind of spread all over the place now, it's very centralized. And it might have been back then. They might have taken some banks or some holding places for it, but like ShakePay, Coinbase, River, something like that. How easy would that be? Because that's what people really have to understand is like when you look at your wallet, your River wallet, or your ShakePay wallet, or your Coinbase or Kraken, it shows a number on the screen there. But that is not your Bitcoin, because unless you have 12 words associated with that wallet, somebody else has the key to that Bitcoin. So in this case, it would be ShakePay, it would be River, it'd be Coinbase, it'd be Kraken. And then for the government to go to those corporations, they're the ones holding the keys to all that Bitcoin. Hundreds of thousands of people, they're just trusting that Kraken's going to make good on their IOU. When they go to withdraw that Bitcoin, they're going to send that Bitcoin. They're going to have that Bitcoin to send them. So it's one thing to look at your screen and say, oh, I have 0.05 of a Bitcoin worth $5,000. No, you don't. You have an IOU from Coinbase or Kraken saying that hopefully, if things work out, they'll be able to send you that Bitcoin. But for the government to go to Kraken or to Coinbase or to ShakePay or to whoever, that's way easier than going house to house, wallet to wallet, and trying to get that Bitcoin. So if you are somebody who's concerned with the 6102 attack happening, the best thing that you can do is just get it off the exchanges, hold the private key, but more than anything else, understand the importance of keeping that private key safe. Because, if something happens to your River, maybe they'll make good, maybe not. Something happens at your bank, maybe they'll make good, maybe not. Somebody steals your private key or you mess it up, it's gone. Bye-bye. So there's good and bad of it. You get the freedom there, the sovereignty aspect, but it comes at a price of some responsibility with it.
And 100%, it comes back down to property rights. If you have, I look at Bitcoin in 3 different lenses. You get 3 different benefits from having Bitcoin. The first benefit is like the obvious one, the number go up, like you get wealthy, you get more purchasing power, all of that. The second one is, for me, the foundation to all of it. It's the freedom, it's the property right. And you only get that if you have it in self-custody and in proper self-custody. There are things out there where it is called self-custody and you don't even have most of the keys. You just have 1 out of 3 or something like that, which I don't call self-custody. It's a legit thing, you can use it, but that's not what I call self-custody. And so if you have legit self-custody, that's the highest property right you can ever have. And that's why I say, even if I'm getting more excited about strategy and Strive and all those kind of things, I how should I frame it? I would always go vast majority of liquid net worth being in Bitcoin self-custody. That's always the move, because that's the only thing that protects me from everything else. That's the highest property right you can possibly have. And so you should always have it in Bitcoin self-custody. And then you can experiment with like have some stretch if you want, some strategy if you want, have some small plays in there. It's kind of like, yeah, I want to outperform like some Bitcoin here and there, and like with like 5% of my portfolio. Maybe I'm successful, maybe not. I don't care. If you get bored, that's kind of how I look at it right now. I'm like, it's kind of fun to do all those kind of fancy things, but Bitcoin is the foundation. If you don't have the foundation, don't even look at the other stuff.
What was your third one, Robin? You mentioned number go up, property rights.
My third one is completely disconnected from that. It's the community and culture and mindset aspect. I think so like the first one you get by just like being exposed to Bitcoin on exchange, on anything. The second one you only get if you have self-custody. The third one you only get if you're an active participant in the network. You actively listen to podcasts. That's kind of like the minimum requirement to be kind of an active part in the community. Going to meetups, going to conferences, maybe doing some work, like contributing some articles, contributing something in the community. This gives you like a whole new level of like involvement in the Bitcoin community. And I think if you're a solid Bitcoiner, you should be involved in the Bitcoin community. You should try to go to a local meetup. You should try to be someone engaged in that, because you get the benefit of also knowing all those other guys that also figured it out. And we are all early. Like if we are, let's say Bitcoin goes to 10 million, 100 million, whatever the number is. Wouldn't it be great for you personally to know like 10 other people in your area that also got that and also are on that train, and you formed that connection before you guys got hilariously rich? Like the network is extremely important part of that. So that's how I look at like Bitcoin, what benefits you have from, like, what does Bitcoin give you? And those are the kind of 3 different things and the buckets that I'll usually notice.
Yeah. No, that's great, Robin. I completely agree. I love those points as well. I did want to mention one thing about the self-custody aspect and people putting trust over. Like I think it's a lot of it is unknowingly, like the fact that there is this massive difference between self-custody Bitcoin and IBIT and MSTR. They just think, I think actually what it is a lot of people are just complacent. They just think, well, I don't expect the government's not going to take anything from me. They're not going to. There's no incentive for them to steal these assets. They're not going to take BlackRock's Bitcoin. None of that is certain. Like none of that is certain. I don't know if any of you guys have noticed, or anybody in the chat has noticed, but like the world is a little bit crazy. There's a little bit of chaos in the world, right? And it really only takes a few small little actions in the world to create a massive domino effect where you have a country that becomes tyrannical, and then everything's off the table. And you sure probably hope and wish that you had taken the initiative to have not been complacent and not just chill with the status quo of things that have only been that way since, like, when did 6102 happen? When did the government basically default and steal everybody's gold and then reprice it? Like, that was last century. That was not that long ago.
Less than 100 years.
Yeah, like really not very long ago. And we just all think, oh, that could never happen. And I don't think it's a massive likelihood that it's going to happen in specific countries. I think some countries are more susceptible than others to it, but it's still entirely possible. And you can easily protect yourself the whole time saving fees. Like if you're thinking, oh, I'll just let BlackRock do it, I'll buy IBIT, you're paying for that directly, and then you might be paying entirely if everything goes terribly wrong in that jurisdiction. So I think I mean we're all on YouTube just like yelling, just like take custody, take custody. Every Bitcoiner is doing that. Every public Bitcoiner is doing that, and there's kind of a reason for it. It's like you kind of have to just shout through the void of what people are used to. Oh, I just put my money in the bank, get direct deposit. I don't think too much about it. Like, you have to break out of that. You have to think about being able to actually own your assets and how you're going to protect them.
Yeah. And so there's a couple of comments, like Kranskinator just brought something up, and then someone earlier said that legally the United States had to auction off the Bitcoin. And again, I've bought with Joe Carlasari a number of years ago about this, when it was CBDCs were really a big thing, like 4 or 5 years ago. I remember on Spaces a few times going back and forth with him. And Joe's a lawyer. I'm married to a lawyer as well. So caveat or full disclosure. But, as a lawyer, you tend to believe the law because you are the law to a large extent. And Joe believes the government's going to follow the law. And I don't know who said it earlier, but the government can do whatever they want. This goes back to abstract power versus real power and the Jason Lowry thesis, which I don't totally agree with his whole thesis. I believe a chunk, and I was talking to Jor about this the other day, but the abstract power versus real power is incredibly useful for the times we're going through. Seeing a global world order just disintegrate before people's eyes, that's an example of real power versus abstract power. When you just say, hey, you're going to lead us and whatever, okay, that's great as long as people believe that thing. Hey, NATO, hey, IMF, hey, those are just arbitrary things, and they change when someone comes in and says, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. And then 30s, we saw what happened when someone says, yeah, I'm not going this way anymore. We see it happen all the time throughout history. Someone puts a flag in the ground, puts their foot down and says, we're going a different direction. And people can like it, love it, hate it. That's just how life works. Genghis Khan had different plans, and he said, nope, I'm going to rape and pillage as many people in the world as I can. And what are you going to do about it? And that's, to me, that's governments. I mean, like, the natural end state of governments is that just by their very existence, they have to continually get bigger, because that's the incentive of government itself, is to continually bloat itself. It's not like any one person is bad inside the government. It's just the natural end state of governments. They get bigger and bigger and bigger and more bloated and take more freedoms and liberties away in the name of protecting and securing the people around you. So all that to say, again, like CBDCs, all these things, Joe was like, well, they can't do that legally. Section 1 of blah, 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 blah. That doesn't matter. This is like George Gammon or Mike Green or some of these guys, the Peter Schiffs, who are going to argue like these semantics instead of zooming out and like they're understanding Jeff Snyder. They're understanding the plumbing of this existing system that's going down. It's the Titanic, and they're telling me about the plumbing and the furnace room and the engine room and how it all works. I'm like, I don't care. I literally couldn't care, because you guys are about to go 12,000 feet under. And this is what the younger generation has awoken to. And they're like, I don't give a shit. I literally could care less about what you're talking about, because it's all a disaster and we're remaking it. And so, point being with all this, trying to land the plane here, is that whether it's, hey, they have to auction things off, whatever. And yes, in a high trust society, or like we're going to follow the rule of law, or we're going to follow these things. I haven't seen a lot of following the rule of law in the last few decades here in America, let alone the rest of the world. America has maybe has the best legal system in the world, but still, clearly there's lots of faults there. We got activist judges. There's just disasters everywhere. So if you're going to sit here and tell me and bet on the government doing what they told you they said they would do, get out of here. I mean, that's why I'm a Bitcoiner at the end of the day. And so that to me is just, it's very important to kind of understand these things and where we are on the timeline. We're at the fourth turning. We're at this end of cycle, and probably end of many cycles. And I've made this joke many times. We're at Back to the Future 2 and Biff Tannen's Pleasure Paradise, when he's steals the almanac and builds himself this alternate time continuum. And he owns everything. Everything's on fire. And you just go get gas, you need a shotgun across your chest, sitting there, making sure no one takes the gas or steals your car or does whatever. And you're on the lookout with your head on the swivel. That's the world we are maybe not there yet for a lot of us in the West, but that world is probably coming more or less. Doesn't mean we're not going to get through it. It doesn't mean, there's not going to be a great abundance on the backside of it, but it's just preparing people for what's coming and what's happening. This is just something. I just turned 39 years old and studying history for literally 30 years of my life and experiencing a lot of these things and seeing it come to fruition. I didn't think people would lock us down 5-6 years ago. I told the story the other day of literally, I thought there might be war. Like I'm in Michigan and the governor said, hey, on Monday, don't show up to work. And I thought it was a joke. And one of my employees told me that. I'm like, what? My heart literally went to 180, like in 3 seconds, because I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. What happened? Everyone sat at home and did nothing. Well, that only happens for so long and things change. And so, read between the lines a little bit. We're coming to that the train is stopping at some point. And that's just, again, all these things we talk about are all fun and fine and dandy until they're not. And I made my bet a long time ago that they'll not be all great at some point, and there's going to be mass chaos. And those are the times that when people are prepared and you've been preparing for these things, you flourish. I don't know when that's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be next year or 10 years from now or whatever, but I know it comes because history's told me such.
And it might look a lot different than people think too. That's the thing. It's like people have this idea of a Mad Max, maybe because it's been in so many movies and books throughout the years, and just kind of where our mind goes now. But like I saw a comment there in the chat saying, how relevant the abstract power, the real power is. Again, you don't really need to understand the whole concept of it itself. But to me, I think that the reason why people like King Charles, who's sitting there in his chair with a crown on and some, very expensive robe that he's wearing. The reason why people like that maintained control for so long was because, number one, they had the ability to create paper money, basically, especially since 1913. And that was, when you're thinking about abstract versus real power, in that day, I would say that is actually real power to a degree. Because if you have the ability to, it is, I guess, still kind of abstract in the sense that it's not real. So I don't want to get too far down any road here. But like the thing that I always go back to is Bitcoin is reality. And Bitcoin is reality was actually one of the US commanders in the military who made that quote a couple weeks ago. And that's absolutely true, because it doesn't matter what this law says or how many units of this they print or how many shares of this equity they issue. None of that matters. That's all fake. That's all manipulated. That's all part of the same system. And when we think back to the guy sitting in the chair with the crown, they were able to kind of put choke points at different parts of the world. One of them was a money printer. One of them was controlling the straits that commodities and products could flow through. But in that system, they had the power because Bitcoin didn't exist. That's kind of where I was going with it. Is like Bitcoin didn't exist at that point. So we didn't have anything to anchor reality to. You know what I mean? Like in a world where Bitcoin doesn't exist, yeah, the king's probably still sitting there. Yeah, people are still probably bowing down to him. They probably still have control of the straits. But we didn't have an anchor before Bitcoin where it measures reality. And that's really what's happening. Is it's repricing the world. It's showing you what reality is. No matter what the TV says or what the king says or what President Trump says, none of that's reality. Bitcoin is reality because nobody can change it. Nobody can delete it. Nobody can manipulate it on the base layer. And really, that's what the conversation has been about today, is anchoring yourself to that reality. And I think that the only way you do that is getting Bitcoin, getting the private keys to that Bitcoin, and protecting that Bitcoin. Everything else is going to go up and down. Everything else is fake. Bitcoin is reality.
That was great. I loved it. Like if Joe is cooking, I'm like, I just like, don't stop it.
Well, it's hard because I didn't want to get, Forrest and I have actually talked about this in the last couple of days. We're like, should we do a really deep dive on the software thesis? Because I just think it's so incredibly important. And more so than anything else is we're just going to see that play out over these next couple decades is like, what's real, what's fake. And to me, everything other than Bitcoin and self-custody is fake. All the laws, all the currencies, all the shares, all the cryptos, everything else is fake. And people don't really tie these things together yet. They see this price of like $80,000. And yes, when Bitcoin came out, everything kind of dropped in comparison, and it stayed there, and it's never going back up. That trend's never going to turn around. But that's really what's happening here. People see the $80,000 price tag on Bitcoin, but really what it's doing is it's reality. It's remeasuring everything. It's calling bullshit on every part of the system. It's saying, no, that's not actually worth $1 million. It's actually only worth 5 Bitcoin. That's not worth $50 million. It's actually only worth, X amount of Bitcoin, X amount of sats. And that's just going to keep playing out over time. That's what Bitcoin is really doing more than anything else, is just giving you a view of reality, which we haven't had for hundreds of years now.
It's I've actually messaged Jason Laurie because I was like, I don't see anything. I'll just invite him. Maybe he comes on the podcast. And he messaged me actually back, and we were talking, and he will come back. That was kind of like the thing that I got from it. He will come back, and I think it will be pretty cool when he comes back in the media scene with his thesis and things that he's working on. Like, I think that he is working on a lot of things in the background, and when he comes back on the scene, it will be fantastic. That's kind of what I got from like my small DM exchange with him.
I love that. Yeah, no, it's huge. It's I mean, we need all angles, at the end of the day, and he's a part of that. Obviously he works for the government. So there's that angle of it. I'm not a huge fan. This is the thing. And this is another thing of like holding two opposing opinions in your head at the same time. He came out, one of the first things, I think maybe the first thing he said is Bitcoin's a weapon. And I know that got a lot of people riled up, 5 years ago, or whenever it was. And so you have like the entrapment angle of government officials, which you've seen many times throughout history, whether it's Ruby Ridge in northern Idaho or whatever, entrapping people, Americans, and people losing their life because of it, stuff like this. So you have that angle of Jason Lowery, but then a lot of what he writes about obviously is very good. So this is where, like, at the end of the day, everyone's a scammer. Michael Saylor, me, Jason Lowery, doesn't matter. Like, we're all scammers. Well, we're all scammers in there, the Bitstein article, right? Like, we're all scammers in our own way. And which is the point of it all. And that's why the point of the talk today is so important. And it's self-custody. It's knowing what you own. And the difference is not to say that you can't hold Stretch or you can't hold MSTR or whatever it is. That's not the point. It's knowing the difference between the two and understanding that. And everyone's going to use the tools, because there's the game theory. The problem is there's a game theory on this is why, like, Bitcoiners, adoption doesn't happen very quickly, right? Because everyone looks around each other, Spider-Man memes it, and says, well, no one else is going to do this. I know what you're saying, Brandon, and you're right in the sense of, like, we should self-custody, right? Or what all of us are talking about here. But I'm looking around and I see everyone else going to buy MicroStrategy and getting themselves 11% a month. That's enticing. And so you're telling me I have to go do something that's hard, and then these people are taking the easy way out. And I'm just talking to Bitcoiners right now, basically. And so that's tough. That's very hard because there's no coordination. And so it's a game theory of like, well, everyone else is doing it, so I'm going to do it too. So at what point is there a saturation in the market where everyone realizes, and this is unfortunately why I talk about pain a lot, touching the stove, and pain's a great teacher, and Max Payne, and like all these Tannen's Pleasure Paradise, because to me, the only way I see things changing is along, maybe it's 10, 20, 50 years of just education, and maybe the younger generation. And that's why I think it's 10 to 20 years out, the younger generation coming through and realizing, what are we doing? And just dumb things continuing to happen mixed on top of that. It's just dumb stuff. That's how humans learn. And we keep doing dumb stuff. We keep blowing ourselves up. And then the younger generation comes along, science progresses one funeral at a time. And then, okay, yeah, again, my kids are all under 10 and they know the difference between money and how it works. And the younger generation will grow up like that, knowing the difference, not touching fiat. And so that's a very different world. And then we see it right now where a lot of people are in an existing system that have done very well. And we're telling them like, oh yeah, the central banks screw you over. And they're like, well, I've done pretty well in my life. And so you're not going to get many of those people to change. And so, and again, the other thing I was going to say earlier too, someone had mentioned the other comment, which I tangented on the first one, which is, Stretch and SATA, all these Strive, everything they're doing, that's going to be part of what gets us to 1 million. So don't talk too much ish about them. But for sure, like this is the whole point. Like all of it's good for Bitcoin. What George said earlier and has said many times, like this is why you need a self-custody, and what Forrest has been explaining and Robin, like and the point is, this is why I would bring up everyone's a scammer too, because it's like, I can hold two opinions in my head at the same time. Like, I'm a believer in just self-custody. If we all jump together, we can change the system tomorrow or today if we wanted to. But I also know at the same time, realistically speaking, no one's going to do that, because I just talked about the game theory of, well, no one else is doing it. So it creates this circular loop, doom loop of, well, they're not doing it, so I'm not going to do it. And then he's not doing it, so I'm not going to do it. So like, you just keep going around and around. And what breaks us out of that? It's pain. It's doing dumb things and education over time.
But do you think that everything is good for Bitcoin? Or you think there's like things that are actually bad for Bitcoin?
Well, I think I think Bitcoin is being attacked all the time. You know, it's always being attacked, and I think some of these things that are happening could end up being bad for Bitcoin potentially. And whether it's mempool stuff or protocol, different things, right? Like, I think the biggest threat to Bitcoin is humans. It's not like a technological thing at this point. It's not software, hardware, whatever. It's just us doing dumb stuff. It's us getting cute and fancy. Like when you're playing hockey, right? Like you got a guy like toe dragging through the middle. Nowadays, it's cool to toe drag and, get your dangles, and like the league is very soft now. The NHL and hockey in general is very soft. Like it used to be, you cut across the middle and you're trying to toe drag with your head down. A defenseman would cut across the middle and just take your head off, and you're laying on the ice in a pool of your own blood. And then you got up, you well adjusted at some point when you came back out of your state of unconsciousness, and you'd be like, wow, I probably shouldn't do that anymore. Well, that used to be how life worked in many ways, but now it's like, well, I can do whatever. We remove some rules from society, and now the game's played very differently. And so all that being said is, I think that there are certain things of us getting fancy and us getting in our own way and trying to build extra stuff on top of the protocol. Like, we're going to, do these fancy things and inscribe stuff into it and do stuff. It's like, no. It's money. And so we are our own greatest threat by far. It's not even close, because it is a human system at the end of the day. So to me, it's just, and sailors talked about this, activity bias, like, don't get cute. And people want to continually do things to amplify their returns. They want to do this because they missed Bitcoin 10 years ago. Mike Green, my wife told me to buy. My mom told me to buy. I didn't do it. Now I'm trying to catch up. I'm trying to go to the casino, Dogecoin, like whatever it is. And like, they're trying to get more Bitcoin at the end of the day. So anyway, that to me, Robin, is like, it's not hardware, software, whatever. It's just us doing dumb things, whether it's like what you guys are talking about, we're not self-custodying, or it's like I'm trying to play with a bunch of leverage or whatever, or I'm building things on top of Bitcoin that will not be good for Bitcoin. They increase the attack surface of Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera. So
there are a few questions that came in that we haven't caught. Thank you so much for StreamYard to put question marks next to the questions so it's easier to find. The first one that I found was actually an interesting one, because we talk about strategy, and all of those things. It's any thoughts on 80% of Stretch being owned by retail, kind of the thing that a lot of retail actually like it and not the institutional crowd. Do you guys have thoughts on that?
It looks like Forrest is doing a little bit of work behind the scenes here. I just want to do, are you looking into that, Forrest, like the Stretch thing, STRC?
Yeah, I was just looking into something. I mean, I would just say that there's $10 billion worth of STRC out there right now. And so if 80% of it is owned by retail, that's $8 billion of retail money has been put into this, essentially. And that's a lot of money that could have went to Bitcoin, like directly to Bitcoin, right? This went to this sort of filtered through MSTR to buy Bitcoin for MSTR. I think people are always saying, oh, like, I always say, like, look into Bitcoin, STRC should be short-term capital, all this. People just constantly say, nobody's buying STRC that would have bought Bitcoin instead of. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, there was even somebody in the chat saying, oh, I would hold STRC to pay my bills and then use the rest to buy Bitcoin. You're delaying your purchase of Bitcoin by buying a short-term instrument instead. To some degree, why not just hold enough STRC to just pay bills, then have the other capital and buy Bitcoin directly? You would have more Bitcoin, because you're going to be able to buy less and less Bitcoin with that 11.5% that you get with STRC every single year on average, as Bitcoin continues to go up in fiat denominated value. So I think there's a lot of people that own STRC instead of Bitcoin. There's just a lot of people that probably don't. It took a replacement of their bond portfolio or their cash savings or something like that. But I mean, that's a lot of retail being, not buying Bitcoin and MSTR buying that Bitcoin instead on their behalf.
I just talked with Rashad yesterday. We recorded a podcast, will come out probably Sunday, on that very question, because I was asking, like, how do you deal with all those different things now being in Bitcoin? There's cold hard cash that you can still hold, fiat cash. There is Stretch, there is MSTR, there's Bitcoin in self-custody versus Bitcoin. Like, there's so many different options now, and so distracting now. Previously it was easy. It's like there's Bitcoin and there's shitcoins. Like, yeah, but it's not that easy anymore. It still is, but like, it's like, for me, like, some like gaming token is like a very obvious scam and like very obvious shitcoin in a different way as Stretch is. So it's like, there's a different degrees of shitcoin. We also call real estate a shitcoin, and it has some, like, it's a different kind of shitcoin than Ethereum. If I had the choice between Ethereum and real estate, I would still choose like real estate. I like that shitcoin more. But like he mentioned, he looks at those instruments for like duration of capital. So if you're just like for the next 3 months and you're just saving in an emergency fund, that should be in cold hard cash, because it's stable. It's just like it's not volatile. It's like you should just have it cash on hand. If you look out 3 months to like 1 year, maybe 2 years, maybe, I think he mentioned 4 years, which I think is too long. But like I think like 1 year is a good metric. Like 3 months to 12 months, it's a kind of nice area to have something in Stretch, and it's only if you have an upcoming expense that you already know at that time. So for example, if you know you're gonna move in 9 months and you need like 20K for new furniture and deposit and whatever, it's a really nice place to put your money for like the next 9 months, because if it holds the promise of like it being stable, it paying the 11%, we like, it's not a sure thing, but like, let's just assume they keep the level at par and they keep paying the interest rate. It's a really nice place for your short-term cash if you know you have an expense. But anything, in my opinion, over like 1-2 years, it should be in Bitcoin. Like, there's no place for anything else. And I'm not saying, I'm saying Bitcoin for under 1 year is a little bit harder, because you don't know if Bitcoin is at 40K or like 400K in 9 months. Like, both are possible. I just don't know which one it is. And in the past, I made the mistake of being just all into Bitcoin, like nothing else, just like all in Bitcoin, which worked out. Like I increased my purchasing power over the last 5-6 years. But having the optionality of like an emergency fund, of having the optionality of like something that pays me not 0.3% interest rate, but like 11% interest rate, maybe 8% after taxes and all that shit. It's a nice option to have. But I agree, it's a shitcoin.
It would be an interesting experiment. There's some serious inefficiencies with this. There's tax inefficiency. There's the efficiency of how MSTR can do this exact same thing. But it would be an interesting experiment to run, buying STRC or buying Bitcoin and just taking Bitcoin and selling an 11.5% of your Bitcoin stack every single year. And over a certain year period, would you have more value in the STRC that you bought or in the Bitcoin that you bought?
That's interesting.
That's basically what MSTR is doing. But again, they have more efficiencies with that because they can sell MSTR stock at a premium sometimes to pay the dividends. But essentially what they're doing is they're taking the capital gains from the Bitcoin, right? They increase the value of the balance sheet and paying their obligations. So you could personally do that. And again, there's a lot of inefficiencies like tax, selling Bitcoin as a taxable event, all this BS. But I wouldn't be surprised over a 5-year, 10-year period that your Bitcoin, even if you sold 11.5% of it every single year, would still be worth more than the STRC that you had.
Yep. 100% agree. And I think that, going back to the the software here, I think this is really important for people to understand, because Forrest is kind of comparing the fiat returns as kind of like the main thing there, which is really what concerns most people. They don't see a world where they're going to need to pack up and leave their country and take things with them, or they say something online that their government doesn't like and they shut them out of their bank accounts. Like, people don't think that that's going to happen to them. And going back to the software, freaking every time I say that, soft war, going back to the soft war thesis here, Brandon mentioned that Bitcoin is a weapon, and some people kind of got turned off by that. I think Bitcoin absolutely is a weapon. And he kind of spoke about it as from a country's perspective, right? But we can kind of look at this from both sides of it, because what is a country? A country is a group of people, same as like a government is, a strategy is, an entity is just a bunch of people together. And so think about a country and a person together. If you say something online that your government doesn't like, or you do something that your government doesn't like, they have the ability to shut you out of the system. They can turn off your bank account. They can make your life very difficult through their system that they have, right? That's kind of like the power that they have. But Bitcoin goes around that whole thing. If you're holding Bitcoin in self-custody, you can say whatever you want to. Nobody can shut you off. Nobody can seize your wealth if you have it properly secured. And just like a country, if you think about that from a country's perspective, let's say that there's a small country out there and they're failing to comply with the IMF rules or the UN laws, and they're like, we're tired of this, man. We're tired of playing with you in your system. We can't win this. We cannot win this fight because of the chokehold that you have on that system. So what can they do? They can take their natural resources, or they can convert some of their capital into Bitcoin. And then what's Russia going to do? What's America going to do? What's China going to do? You can't do anything. You can lock them out of the SWIFT network, but we saw what happened with Iran when they got sanctioned. You cannot stop somebody who has Bitcoin in self-custody more. That's a weapon. I don't know how else you could explain that. That's a weapon for a person. That's a weapon for a country, is Bitcoin in self-custody, because no matter what they do, they cannot stop you. And that's not the case in the fiat system. They can shut your bank account down. They can sanction you. They can stop you. So in that sense, Bitcoin is a weapon. Stretch is not a weapon. Stretch is not a weapon, right? Like these are two different conversations here, two different things.
I'm surprised there's not more people riled up in the chat. I mean, yeah, the reason people, obviously, just for some context for people who might not know, I mean, obviously there's in the 90s where there's cypherpunks or code is speech. I mean, a lot of these things have been fought before in the United States, been resolved, quote unquote. They're all resolved until they're not, like going back to flowchart, back to our conversation earlier of when the government says they want to come after you. But again, someone made a great point in the chat again of we are the government. At the end of the day, no matter what place you live in the world, the people are the government. And so just because certain populations like to revolt against their government more than others, it doesn't change the fact that, again, the government is the people at the end of the day, and you really control your government. I mean, that's really all there is to say about it. But going back to the software, it's a lot of people will say it's a shield, which, again, two things can be true. I think there are many truths on either side, however you look at Bitcoin. And I told you yesterday, Jor, I have a problem with a lot of Bitcoiners in the sense of a lot of people just aren't down for the fight. And that's just in the revolutionary side of me coming down. And I just tend to lean toward that side. But this goes back to everyone wants to kind of just sit back and wash their hands of it and say, hey, I'm just going to sit here and do nothing. Okay, well, the more you do that,
then stretches for you.
Yeah, the more you do that in life, Plato or Aristotle, I can't remember who said it. If you aren't involved in politics, which politics is life, that's how it works. I got to close my door. You will be governed by your inferiors. End of story. End of story. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There just is not. When you recede from society, like it's Field of Dreams, and disappear into the cornfield, good luck. We see the remnants of what that looks like, and it's America. It's the West right now, and just good people standing idly by and doing nothing. You should not abdicate that civic responsibility of being plugged into what's going on. You can vote with your feet, your wallet, the ballot box, and the ammo box. It was the two of the big ways. Now you can vote with your feet, your wallet, and your voice. Yep. And the only easy day was yesterday. And this is the thing that for 30 years of my life, I've just never understood. I haven't understood the libertarians in America that just like, I'm not voting, I'm not doing this, I'm, all these shenanigans and people just like being unplugged. You will be governed by your inferiors. And that's exactly what's happened. And so again, to me, it's people just getting in their feelings and not being okay with the fight and not being up to the challenge. And at the end of the day, Bitcoin, it could be a weapon, it could be a shield, it could be all those things, it could be one and not the other. I don't know. But when I see people kind of just like, like getting all like up in their oats, it's just like, what are we doing? Like you understand this is the highest part of the stack, right? You are saying I'm using a different money. That's the control lever of the world. If you're not down for the fight, then you should probably go somewhere else. Like George said, stretches for you. I mean, there's
somebody in the chat here saying it's so crazy that some of you don't understand STRC. We do understand it. Like we're not saying that it's a Ponzi scheme. We're not
gotta hold two opinions in your head. Yeah, exactly. Like
we're just saying that we're talking about two different systems here, right?
Yep. 100 things can be true. This is a product of government school. I mean, this is again when you have a Scantron test and it just tells you true and false. That's not how life works. This is a gray area. Life is all gray, and it's hundreds of answers, thousands of answers, holding opinions in your head that contradict each other. Like that, it's okay. But school doesn't teach you these things, unfortunately.
Jason says it's stable, so I can park my money in it and know it'll be there when I need it. Well, that's also not guaranteed. Like if one day it came out that Saylor actually doesn't have the Bitcoin, or that Coinbase loses the Bitcoin, or something happens, that's worth nothing. It's worth nothing. So that's not a guaranteed. While I do that, I'll get my 11.5% for the same money that will be sitting in a savings account, getting 0.1%. That's fine. But I'm just saying, like, STRC is not a weapon. You can't do and say whatever you want. Brandon just said their voice is one of your weapons. And if you have to ask somebody's permission to withdraw your wealth, if you wanted to sell your STRC and your broker and bank have to get together to send you money so that you can do something with that, that's not a weapon. It's not a weapon at all. I know what you're saying. Like it makes sense for some people, but it's just two different things. It's not the same as holding Bitcoin in self-custody. That's the weapon. STRC is not that at all, no matter what they're paying.
Maybe the how should I say it? I think the better comparison is like you have different tools, and some of them are effective in other things than others.
True.
Like you have like if you stretch is not a weapon, it's just like a tool that you have to your disposal, and you can use it for certain things. Like you, as I said before, you can use it to like park cash for like 8 months. But as also Joe said, don't take it as risk-free. And then I'm very careful with that. I'm currently actually like I invested some in Stretch to test it out and how it is with Austria and like the taxes, and I just wanna like test it out and bought the minimum possible amount for me to make sense in like a fee perspective. And I will probably make a video on it in like half a year when it actually goes out. And I want to get into all those calculations that Forrest also mentioned of like when is it better to buy Bitcoin? When is it better to have that? And is it better to just like sell off some of your Bitcoin instead of like holding it? Because like it's also like what are you comparing it to? Because you can't compare Stretch to Bitcoin because it's like two different things. And that's what we are kind of saying. Like Stretch is not at all Bitcoin. It's like a very different thing. But I'm also holding one of the biggest shit coins, which is the euro, because it's one of the tools I kind of like to have like a few months of leeway in my local fiat currency. And so I can use euros even though I hate euros. And so like that's kind of the nuance. There's like as Brandon said, you can have like two opinions. You can like something as useful and still say like it's not what Bitcoin is. And so that's what I'm also like saying, like 70 to 80% is always in Bitcoin self-custody. And then maybe you play with some strategy, maybe you play with some income thing. I recently had Brian Harrington on, and he completely switched to income. Like I think he has some Bitcoin still, but he is building like income portfolios and wants to be an income investor and just like build those portfolios out, it's an interesting strategy. It's a different way. It's just like very, very different to having Bitcoin in self custody.
He's
I'd rather have
a new wing of the Titanic.
Yeah, like that.
That's real estate, baby.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Oh man.
But that's what it is.
But it is. It is. I mean, I'm trying to think of how we can loop this back in.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Hopefully Sailor doesn't watch this episode. I doubt he would. But that's the thing. It's like, I'm not even bashing STRC. I'm not even saying it's a bad thing. That's the whole point that I really want to make.
Yeah.
Is like, I'm not saying it's going to fail. I'm not saying it's very risky. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that it requires somebody else's permission to use. That's it. That's really all that it is.
Yeah, it's they're just two massively different assets, as we've explained. You have to go way deeper to fully understand it, but you could simply just say that Stretch is a short-term asset with counterparty risk. Bitcoin's a long-term asset with short-term volatility risk. Yeah. Those fit differently in a portfolio, and you can decide yourself how much you want to own of either.
You guys just made me think of something. I think that, and we've talked about this before with top of the funnel and his Stretch and all the treasury plays. Are they top of the funnel for Bitcoin and getting yourself to eventually Bitcoin and understanding it and grokking it and eventually getting to self custody? And then someone said in here earlier too we mentioned it, of these are all part of Bitcoin getting to 1 million.
Yep.
And that's absolutely right. Sovereign wealth funds coming in, countries, right? Like we've said this a million times, everyone needs Bitcoin. And then a lot of us Bitcoiners, right? We get upset when these guys end up coming in, even though we said they all need to come in because you see it and you want the plebs to get it, right? I mean, all of us want that. We want the plebs to get it first. And unfortunately, we don't live in this perfect world where we can just like slot in like, okay, 7.5 billion plebs get it first, and then countries, then sovereign wealth funds, and everyone else gets it. And it's just, that's not how it works, unfortunately. So this goes back to the idealism versus realism and trying and holding opposing opinions in your head at the same time. And this goes back to this whole thing, which is admittedly not a super easy thing to do. And it takes time, it takes practice to do it. And being able to talk about out of both sides of your mouth to a degree. And so I brought up everyone's a scammer. Like I can talk about Stretch and these things and understand it and say, hey, these for the right person, the nuance, strategy and all this. At the same time, hey, like we just did, we talked about all these different, self-custody being the best, and just knowing what you own and understanding what you own. And I think that it's great for someone who's in Bitcoin. This is what I just kind of like put together and just thought of, which was like the treasury plays. If you own Bitcoin already, yeah, like it'll be great for you. If you already grok Bitcoin, it'll be awesome. And you hold it in self custody. That's amazing. Like, your purchasing power goes up, whether it's in USD over time or just obviously Bitcoin, 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. Like I can trade my 1 Bitcoin now for, whatever, a really nice car, a nice Chevy Tahoe here in America or whatever. But eventually that 1 Bitcoin will trade for a 300 unit apartment complex. But the thing that's frustrating, I think, to many people is it's the people that aren't in Bitcoin yet, right? And that's what a lot of Bitcoiners get upset about. And this goes back to the idealism versus pragmatism talk once again of we're just not happy that other people are getting in when all the plebs aren't in yet. So yeah, it's just tough because it's for the existing people that hold it, great, awesome, you're winning, and all the other people are starting to come in. The big guys are starting to come in. It just doesn't leave as much. Sailor's taken down, like we started the show, he's 24,000 more Bitcoin, as Rajat would say, 24,000 more whole coiners gone, so here
I want to bring in one more aspect to the whole thing with strategy, with all the strifes and like all the strikes and all of those things, which I'm like slowly learning about. So like, please forgive me guys if I make some mistakes here and there, but like they're all centralized, controlled, and that's why you have to keep up with them. And I learned that from before I got into Bitcoin, I was a stock investor. So I come from that world, and I love that world. And to a certain degree, I still like watching earnings calls and all of that stuff. But you have the duty and the obligation to keep up with what Stretch is doing, what strategy is doing, what Michael Saylor is saying, because if you don't, he might change something, and it does no longer fit to your initial theory why you initially invested in. And that's a very, very, very big thing that a lot of people overlook. That's different with Bitcoin. I could potentially now invest in Bitcoin, put my money in Bitcoin, and F off for the next 10 years, and Bitcoin is still the same thing.
Yep.
I couldn't say the same thing about strategy. Strategy could completely change course, could completely think about an investor that got into strategy stock in 2017 and said, oh, I'm going to hold this thing for 10 years because I know what they're doing. 10 years later, in 2027, you tune in and you're like, Bitcoin, like they're not even mentioning the software. Like what is going on? Like it's a whole different company. Think about the changes from strategy 2026 to strategy 2016. I mean, it was a positive change, but it could also be a negative change. And so this is my like small thing to that, because I come from that stock world. You have to keep up with stocks. You cannot just invest and forget with stocks. You have to see what the management is doing. I personally like love that shit because like I don't know, like it gives me entertainment.
That's why.
Like I'm a lunatic, but I'm a sick bastard. But most people don't like it, and most people still invest without caring what the management is doing and what they're actually like producing and what direction they're going into. And so I really hope for everyone that is invested in Stretch, strategy, Strive, Strike, whatever, please keep on doing your research. It's not enough to build your thesis once. With Bitcoin, it could be enough if you build a well enough thesis. Just invest and like wait 10 years. Those are very different things.
Yeah, and I would just say personally, I think it's just a different degree of the rate of change, because Bitcoin will change as well. Bitcoin has changed a lot since it came out. There'll continue to be changes in the way we use it, like, you know, hierarchical deterministic wallets was a massive upgrade to be able to have Bitcoin as a store of value to actually secure it properly. There's been soft forks, there's been attempts at changes, but it's really, really difficult to change. Whereas if you've ever listened to a strategy earnings call, they're announcing some massive change. They're buying back the convertible bonds. Meanwhile, 3 months ago, they just released their preferreds. Some of their preferreds were more successful than others. They're going to double down on these ones. They're going to retire these. It's just constant, rapid, massive change. So there still is change within Bitcoin. I would just put that in as a little caveat that you're likely able to leave this thing for 100 years and be okay. But there still is some small tail risk of some sort of change and needing to keep up with it every couple of years, as opposed to every month with strategy, with an investment like strategy.
Yeah, it's a good nuance. Like Bitcoin looks very different than it looked like 10 years ago.
Exactly.
The core idea is the same, but you should, like, even in Bitcoin, I mean, that's kind of the whole reason why we like Bitcoin content creators are around, because people want to keep up with it and people want to like see what it is doing and all of those things. But like realistically, like if you understood Bitcoin and you just like relax and see the incentives going, you could potentially check in like once a year, like once every 6 months, and it's fine. You don't, and as to your point, strategy changed a lot in the last 1 year, like a lot.
A ton.
From they want to pioneer in the convertible debt space to now the preferred stocks. Now they want to retire all the debt that they had. And like 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, they wanted to ride that convertible debt thing to the end. So it's like very different strategies, like fundamentally different. Bitcoin.
Well, think about it this way. This is one of the major issues that people have with Ethereum, where you have like the Ethereum protocol, and so they have this big plan, the roadmap for the next year. They have the supply, and then it changes, and then so it's the same kind of thing with strategy. It's the exact same thing. They kind of have like their protocol in place, but it's always changing, so you can never really rely on it, right? And even Saylor, he's like, we're not going to sell any shares until it's unless it's below a 2x multiplier, whatever the hell it was. And then the next week he issued more shares. And it's just like, that's what Ethereum does. That's what Vitalik did. And that's what pissed everybody off so much. It's like, it's the proof of stake network where whoever has the control of it, they get to change however they want to. Whereas Bitcoin's much different. It's proof of work, where you don't just have the ability to make a change week to week or month to month, quarter to quarter. It takes a very long time. It's very difficult to change by design. And so it's I don't want to call strategy Ethereum, but it's the same kind of premise. It's a proof of stake.
Yeah, and
it's like the second best thing.
Yeah, which has been the whole talk and what we've all said. I mean, we're all saying different parts of the same thing at the end of the day. I mean, Erel made a great point in here that what was it? Saylor went on every podcast explaining how you should buy Bitcoin before he burns the whole system down. And yeah, whether he's a private entity doing it all on his own volition with his company, or he's a public entity, but he's an individual doing it on his own, whether he's doing it for the U.S. government, it doesn't matter, because that could be the case. Like that's what they could be doing, and so that's very real. And maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, maybe that's his plan, maybe it's not. And like Robin said, his great point. The beauty of Bitcoin, the promise of Bitcoin, is that you don't have to be hedge fund manager. You don't have to be going to the casino. You don't have to do what Robin's doing, or Forrest, or guys that are very smart doing this all the time. Name the person, right? The people that are out there, like that's their job, or like they've studied these things a lot. The average guy, being a lawyer or digging ditches or being a dentist or whoever, working at, Applebee's or Tim Hortons. Well, you don't have to be a hedge fund manager. You don't have to study as much as Robin's doing, right? So that's the nuance once again coming in of the time horizons, what your experience in life, your time you can commit, and so that's such such a good point by Robin that it has to be kind of stated again. And the average person has no idea what they're getting into, and I think that's where. And Robin, you asked this earlier. I think there are some people top of the funnel. I shouldn't say this. I don't know if Stretch or any of these are going to be top of the funnel, like in a large sense necessarily, but I do think there will be many people that come down and come out Bitcoiners eventually at some point for sure, because like if you're attached to strategy some way or Michael Saylor, now this is the thing I will caveat and say he's starting to get a little bit out there, and this is what's very tough. Now he's talking Ethereum DeFi protocols, which I know none of us are cool with, but he's got his company that he wants to sell shares of. And this is like this thing we're trying to get away from. It's like, we were doing this loop and it's like, okay, we're doing well. And then like, now we're coming back to like where we started. It's like, no. Like, so that's the thing that's the real problem I have. The other stuff I don't have a problem with necessarily, because everyone's got their own, nuance to life and what's happening, like we talked about. And so that's the thing we have to kind of just watch. And because where I was going with that is, if you're hanging around Saylor and what he's been talking his game for 5 years, saying, and like Eros said, I'm burning the system down. If you're reading between the lines, I'm going to do it through the capitalist way, through Wall Street. I'm going to burn it down from the inside out. I'm buying Bitcoin, get on my mission, or just buy Bitcoin yourself and put it in self-custody because it's coming down. Now, if you're around that and you're going on calls, you're inevitably going to hear Saylor on podcasts or his calls or whatever, and you're going to be learning a fair amount of Bitcoin. Yeah. And so that is a good thing. So indirectly, it's top of funnel because you're just in that system and you're hearing these people talking about Bitcoin and you're learning Austrian economics. You're like, just by osmosis, you're starting to learn some of these things over time. So I guess all that to be said, we just have to keep an eye on what's happening as of this past week and just, starting to talk about some of these other things. That's where it can get kind of gray and just get a little murky of, hey, this is top of funnel, but now if we're starting to go down the path of talking about these other things outside of Bitcoin, I guess we'll say, not quote unquote, I guess, but that to me is where it gets murky, and we need to not do that.
But there's nothing we can do about them doing it either, right? Like,
yeah, other than talk about it, custody our stuff and talk about it. Yeah.
All of this is just going to happen, and Yeah, I mean, this goes back to that original comment, or one of these comments as well, that, oh, we need STRC for Bitcoin to go to 1 million. No, we don't. It's just going to accelerate it there. It's
True.
just going to get it there faster. We don't need it. It's just
Yes,
happening, and it's happening regardless of what we do. But hopefully, we can push more people into self-custody, and they're going to, secure their generational wealth for themselves and everyone above. Like, you don't want to be that meme of, fumbling generational wealth because you gambled on a short-term asset, which is what these are. But each to their own.
I think we have never been as disciplined as today with sticking on the topic of like
That is
what
also
we
true.
initially said to,
Whole time.
which was a lot of fun. We also never had as many people watching on our intended chat in the BTC Mastermind on the channel. So thank you so much. We almost hit the 40 live viewers at the peak, which was really, really cool. And another 160 just on YouTube and all other channels combined. So really cool for everyone that was joining in and tuning in. Any last words you want to get out there, or should we just wrap it up?
Subscribe
I just want
to
to say
the
one more thing,
Bitcoin
because
Mastermind.
Oh, sorry, Forrest. What did you say?
Subscribe to the Bitcoin Mastermind YouTube channel.
Oh,
that's where we want the chat to happen. We're eventually going to migrate over there completely, but for now, just get ahead of everybody. Go over there, subscribe. Robin is pumping out clips. It looks like he's got another show there that's sort of more
getting after it,
Bitcoin treasury company focused. So definitely go over there, subscribe. It'll be linked in the chats.
Yeah, we had actually that was probably the good call to tell people at the start, because there. What did you say there was over there, Robin? 40 people?
Almost 40. I think at the height there was like 37 or 48
All
or
in the
something like
same
that.
chat. Yeah, I mean, it just makes more sense, because then you can kind of interact with each other in the chat. We can kind of, we see all the chats here in front of us, but it just makes more sense to be part of the same conversation, because not everybody can see all the chats like we can. So next week, make sure you just go over, subscribe there today, or, if you don't want to subscribe, that's whatever. But if you want to watch, if you enjoy what we're doing here, watch it from the main channel there, so everybody can be kind of in the same spot. I just wanted to say, like, I had a comment there. I won't be invited to speak at Strategy World. It was just kind of a joke, but at the same time, it's like, it's more difficult, I think, to talk about this stuff where we are right now, like being 40% off of our all-time high, Bitcoin just kind of chopping sideways for 2 months. Like when Bitcoin really starts running, there's going to be 1,000 podcasts saying the exact same thing that we talked about today. I guarantee it. They're going to say STRC 11.5, that you got tricked, you got scammed, all the Bitcoiners are laughing at you. That's what's going to happen. We're talking about this now, though, while Bitcoin's still just kind of chopping, and because we sound like idiots. It's like we're going sideways. Everybody else holding STRC is earning 11.5%. We sound like idiots. But when Bitcoin starts ripping, there's going to be 1 million people talking about this exact conversation today. It's just that we're trying to get you prepared for that. So we're not saying it's right or wrong. There's good and bad for everything. They're just two completely different assets. And even Saylor, you got to give Saylor some credit for one, because not only has he done more than anybody in Bitcoin, in my opinion, as big picture, but he's also said, like, if you're a Bitcoiner, you want the asset. He said that over and over and over and over again. So it's not that he's trying to scam people. He's just he's a capitalist. And like I said, if I had the ability to do that, I'd be doing the exact same thing. So I don't think he's a bad guy, a bad actor. He's just smart, very smart guy.
Yep. 2 things can be true. 10 things can be true. 100 things can be true. Know what you own. Dive into this stuff, study it, proof of work, all of it. Strategy, what Saylor's doing, Saylor's talks over the years, what he's doing now. Study Bitcoin, study self-custody. Like, just put in the work. And great chat today. I mean, like, this is the banter that we need. Just going back and forth on things and picking things apart and pulling things apart. That's what Bitcoiners do. We trust but verify, or we don't trust, we verify, right? Like, whatever version you're using of it. But we attack things, we kind of peel it apart, and this is why this is so important, and to timestamp these things. So just epic stuff. Great chat today.
Love you. Love you. Love it.
Love you too, Robin. Love you. Yeah.
It just had to come out, Brandon. At some point, in the beginning of the show, before we started recording, I was saying how I love your hair. So now it's out. I'm out of the closet.
He's really in love with that hair.
So thank you so much, guys, for being on, and I'll see you guys next Tuesday again.